it's tabular form for the standard form, right? And we have also discussed the various special situations like degeneracy and unboundedness and multiple optimal solutions, right? So for multiple optimal solution, I asked you to study that graphically you can always see, inspect that if you have multiple optimal solutions or not, right? But from the table, how do you identify that there exists multiple optimal solutions? So has anybody studied it? So what is the answer?
So one of the non-basic variable will have coefficient 0 in the first row.
In the first row, right?
Yeah.
And
So if we make
so.
changes along that, so it will
Mhm.
not affect the z value, and we'll go to
Mhm.
another solution with same z value. So it means the solution is still optimal, but now we have a different solution. It means we have multiple solution.
Right. So basically, see, we have seen that in standard situations, the coefficients of the non-basic variables in the objective row is either positive or negative, right? Usually, and for the basic variables, they are zero, right? Now, if it happens, as you have said, that one of the non-basic variables has zero coefficient in the objective row, which means that even if you include it in the base, so for example here, you see that when you reach this 0.26, right, in this table, so you observe that x4 is non-basic here, so this is non-basic, but it has 0 as a coefficient, right, in the objective. So even if you include it in the base, which means that you are trying to increase the value of x4 from 0 to some positive quantity, right? You can see that because the objective function is independent of x4, so its value will not change. As simple as that. You actually do that, and you form the next table, right? Following the all these Gaussian elimination and all these things, and you will get a different point, which is this 4 3. So this is 2 6. X1 x2, this is 2 6, right? This table, and this one is 4 3, right? So you get another corner point, but your objective value remains the same, which means that it has got multiple optimal solutions. Let me the video on this recording. Okay. Yes. And again, here you see that non-basic variable is this x3 with 0. So even if you again try to apply simplex here, you will get back this table. So there will be a looping. Okay. Um, so this is how you detect multiple optimal solutions, right? So there are three special cases we have studied so far in the simplex method. So it can be, one is the degeneracy, which is a bit more complex, and it may lead you to perpetual loops. So the only way out is that you just change your choice of leaving basic variable. You break the tie, you choose a different variable to leave, right, and see if it gets out of the loop or not. Most of the times it will, but in some cases it may not, right? Um, so as such, there is no solution. There is no, remedy for degeneracy. Um, so in some cases, it may actually get stuck in perpetual loops, right? And then the unbounded solution, unboundedness. How do you detect unboundedness? So when you can increase a non-basic variable as much as possible, there is no constant boundary. When does that happen? when there is no living basic variable. That means you are not able to conduct minimum ratio test. Okay, unboundedness. And then this is the case for multiple optimal solutions. Okay. Now some of you might be thinking that, so far we are discussing only standard forms. That means the maximization objective and less than equal to type of constraints, right? So what about the other forms, like when you have equations equal to type or greater than equal to type, then how do you handle those constraints, right? So let us now look at other forms. Is there any question so far?
No, sir.
Yeah. So now let us look at the other forms. So here, suppose, earlier it was 3x1 plus 2x2 less than equal to 18. Now we have this 3x1 plus 2x2 equal to 18. If I just modify this constraint, to equal to type, then I can easily, visualize it in the graph. So this is the graph of this with this modified constraint, right? And now because this is equal to, what will be my feasible region? So earlier this entire polyhedron, this inside, was the feasible region, right? All the points were feasible. So now I have changed this third constant to an equal to type. So what will be my feasible region now?
So that line will be now the physical region.
Yes, that this line segment, right?
That line segment.
Yes, so this line segment is now my feasible region. Now, so graphically I can see, there are only two corner points for this line segment. So optimal solution will be either one of them. Fine. Now, this is for this problem. Now, for other problems, it might not be so. You may have actually a feasible polyhedron, right? So suppose if I draw here, if I have this kind of constraints, right, where I say, the directions of the constraints are such that I have this as the feasible region, right? It may have greater than equal to, or equal to, or less than equal to type of constraints, right? So, and if you are talking about higher dimensions, like, if you have 3 dimensions, so then this will not be a line, this will be a plane. So, there will be many feasible points, right? Not only this line segment, right? So for higher dimensions, you cannot really inspect in graph, and so you need a method to actually solve this problem, right? So what is the way? Now, in the standard form of simplex method, we have observed that because of the standard form, the origin was always a seed. That means it was always a BFS and it was used as a seed, right? Now we do not want to lose that advantage, because for simplex method of any form, for any model, you will always want an initial solution to start with, and you do not want to spend much energy on finding the initial solution. See, for example, here, if we see, if you want to start the simplex method, so initial solution will be either say 2, 6 or 4, 3. Here origin is not even a feasible solution, right? Now, in order to find 2, 6 and 4, 3, you need to solve like the intersection point of those two lines, right? Two equations, which itself requires some effort, right? And as the problem dimension grows large, this effort is likely to increase only, right? You want a ready-made or an instant seed, which you can use to initialize the method, right? So what we are doing, what we'll do here, we'll try to convert this non-standard form into an equivalent standard one, and we'll use the origin as the seed. So that is the the philosophy of solving the non-standard forms. So how do we convert non-standard forms into standard form? So here you see these these two constants are already in a standard form, right? Only this is in equal to type. Now I want to make it look like less than equal to. Then only I can convert it to standard form, right? Then how to make it look like less than equal to? Because originally this is 3x1 plus 2x2 equal to 18, right? So what I do, I add one variable. This is called artificial variable, which is x5, and make it equal to 18, right? Now this x5 looks like a slack here, right? Why it is called artificial variable then? Why not slack? Because it is not present in the actual system, right? The slack is not there. So we are not calling it slack. We are calling it artificial variable, but it behaves like a slack. Okay. Now, when I add an artificial variable x5, say, which is also greater than equal to 0, it acts like a slack, then the problem is that I have essentially changed the character of this equation. That means it is not an equation anymore, right? If x5 is greater than equal to 0, fine. So then I have to do something to force this x5 to fall to 0 or to take value 0, in the actual system or in the real feasible region, right? So for that, what we do, so if I write the objective function, so my objective was maximize j equal to 3x1 plus 5x2. Okay, I have added x5 to this system. Now I want to force it to 0 in the feasible region of this, of the original problem, right? So what I do, I multiply it with minus, I subtract minus big M x5. And why is that? Big M is see, this big M is a very big number. Suppose this x1 to x5, if they are taking values like say 10, 12, 100 and all, of this range, then big M would be much larger, maybe, 1 million or 10 million. You can set big M like that, right? So if I put a minus big M x5 expression here, and because the problem is maximization type, okay, now if x5 takes some positive value in your solution, say in your optimal solution, suppose x5 is some positive quantity, say 5 or 10, right? What will happen? What will be the value of z?
It will be very huge negative number.
Very huge negative number, right? Which you do not want, right? Because you are trying to maximize. That means you are trying to find x1, x2 and all these things are all positive, right? So you don't want this negative quantity, to reduce your value of z, right? So if x5 is positive, so this expression minus big M x5 will dominate this other expression, remaining expression, which is 3x1 plus 5x2. Okay, it stands too small in front of this. So the beauty is that your solution will never allow x5 to take positive in the optimal solution or even in the feasible solution, right? It will automatically force x5 to 0. Now let us see how it does that. Okay, so this is the idea that this is sometimes also called a penalizing the objective function. You add penalty, that if you make x5 to some positive quantity, then you incur a penalty of big M, right? So this is also known as a penal function. So the idea is that you add a penalty for making x5 positive, right? Now let us see how your simplex method actually drives this x5 to 0. Okay. Now coming back. So now what we have now a problem of standard form, right? So you look at this objective. So this is the objective, and these three are the constraints. And apparently it looks like a standard form, maximization objective, and all constraints are of less than equal to 10. Okay. So graphically, then your objective function of course will change, because you now have xy, so I cannot draw it here. Okay. But essentially your feasible region is now this, right? This entire thing is now your feasible region. Okay. So you can now start from origin 0, 0, which is a seat. So if you start from origin, so you get the next table. This is the table. So this is the table corresponding to the origin 0, 0, right? What is the value of z here? Minus 18m. Okay, and the basic variables are x3, x4 and x5, which are having these values 4, 12, 18. Now you observe that originally what was z? Z was this. Minus z minus 3x1 minus 5x2 plus mx5 equal to 0. But here what we have written, minus 3m minus 3 minus 5 minus 2m, and here minus 18m. How and why? Other expressions, for these constants I have not changed anything, right? But the objective function I have rewritten. I have made, so why I have rewritten this objective function? Why I didn't put, minus 3 in place of x1 and then minus 5 for x2 and then big M for x5? I should have written big M here, right? And then minus 3 and minus 5 here. So this was the objective function. But you see here, I have written it differently. Why and how? Anybody? See, originally, if I would have just written also, my objective function was j is 1, and then for x1 this is minus 3, for x2 minus 5, and then for x3 is 0, x4 0, and for this is big M and RH was 0, right? This would have been the objective row, should have been. But now I have written a different. Can anybody?
You have replaced x5 with x1 and x2?
You what?
From the equation 3x1 plus 2x2 plus x5 equal to
Yeah,
18.
you have replaced x5 in terms of x1 and x2.
Synthetic.
Yeah, so why? Why I have done this?
X5 is artificial variable, so we want to get rid of that.
No, we want to get rid of that, but this zero here is a coefficient. So here the value of x5 is 18, so I have not got rid of it, right? But in the objective function, its coefficient is 0, right? But it has some positive value 18 here, right? I want to make x5 to 0, that means the value should be 0. That's when we get the original equation, right? So that is not the reason. The reason is, see, if I would have written this, then you observe that I have written this x3, x4, x5 in the base, right? That means they're all basic variables, right? They're all acting like slacks. x3, x4 are real slacks and x5 is acting like a slack, right? Now what we know from the simplex method, that in order to choose the entering basic variable, you need to look at only the coefficients of non-basic variables, right? And the coefficients of the basic variable should be 0. isn't it? So x3, x4, x5, so they all should be 0. So that the objective function is expressed only in terms of non-basic variables, which are x1 and x2. So basically what I don't want to express objective function in terms of basic. I only want to express it in terms of non-basic variables. So that when I choose the entering basic variable, I can only focus on non-basic, right? Because basic variables anyway I have solved, I have got their values, right? So I want to understand that which non-basic variable will enter the system, and which one will leave the base. So in the simplex method, we always, so this is a very important, thing, that in simplex method, the objective function should always be expressed in terms of non-basic variables only. And these you have to take care only at the initial table, because on the remaining tables, the following tables will be automatically taken care of by the simplex method. You don't have to worry about it. Only at the initial table you have to carefully observe whether you are writing z in terms of non-basic variables only, right? So I have done a very simple Gaussian elimination operation, and I have see, initially this was big M, so I had to make it 0, right? So what I have done, I have multiplied this last row with big M and subtracted from it. So that is why it has now become -5 minus 2m and -3 minus 3, right? And this has become 0, and this has, so this 0 minus 18m is now 18m minus 18m. Okay. So at the origin, what is the value of z? Minus 18m. As long as the artificial variable is positive, is having some positive value and is in the base, the z will have big M expression. That means it will dominate. It will always dominate. The big M will always dominate. So minus 18m, right? The moment the artificial variable falls to 0, which means it will be thrown out of the base, it will become non-basic. At that point of time only, you will get rid of big M from the objective functional value. Okay, and let us see how simplex does that automatically, right? So 0, 0. Okay, fine. So next, you just follow the method of simplex. So here the most negative would be this one for the fast table. So which one will enter now? Minus 3 and minus 3. So this one will enter, most negative. And which one will leave? This will be 4 divided by 1, 12 divided by 0, we don't do that, and 18 divided by
X3 will leave.
So x3 will leave, right? So x3 will leave. And you get, after doing the Gaussian elimination, you get this next table. Again, you see, what is this point? x1 is 4 and x2 is 0. So that means this is corresponding to this corner point 4, 0. So this one 0, 0, right? This one is 4, 0. Here also, you didn't get rid of big M in the objective function, which means the x5 is present in the base and its value is 6 now, right? Okay. Fine. So if you relate it to the graph, so earlier I was at 0, 0, now I have moved to 4, 0 here, where the value of z is 12 minus 6m. It was actually 12, it should be 12 minus 6m, okay, not just minus 6m. Okay, so now, and this is reasonable because you see at 4, 0 you have a positive slack for this third constraint, right, which is slack is x5, so x5 is positive. So now you are expecting, at least from the graph, that the next iteration will give you this 0.43, and there the x5 will fall to 0 because x5 is on this line, slack for this line, so x5 should fall to 0, and that's when you enter the real feasible region. So far, this 0, 0, 4, 0, they are all artificial. They are all feasible solutions for artificial problem, right? But when you hit this 4, 3, then x5 should fall to 0 and your z should be free of m, and that's when you realize that you have hit the one's, basic feasible solution for the real problem, right? Let us see. So this is actually 12 minus 6m, okay? Then you move to the next, you choose the x2 most negative, and then x5 will leave, you do the Gaussian elimination, and you get this next table, right? What is this table? X1 is 4 and x2 is 3, so 4, 3. Right, from the graph, 4, 3 is a real corner point for the real problem. And you see, interestingly, x5 has left the base. That means it is now non-basic, right, x5. And so its value is 0. Non-basic means its value is 0, right? And automatically you see the, z is now 27, is free of big M, right? That's what is expected. So here you decide to drop. You can decide to drop this x5 column altogether because you don't need it anymore. Why? Because now you have got an initial solution for your simplex method for the real problem. So the purpose of introducing this artificial variable, big M, penalty, and all those things was to actually find an initial basic feasible solution for your real problem. And this table gives you that initial basic feasible solution, right? So now you can also drop x5 from your calculations and just proceed with the normal simplex method, right? So then you see whether it is optimal or not, right? It is not optimal because you have minus negative here for maximization. So you choose x3 to enter, and then by doing minimum ratio test, you find x4 to leave, and you get the next table where you see so this is the 0.26, fine. And you see the Z row is now all 0 or positive, which means this is optimal, right? So this is the optimal solution, 26, and the value is 36. So see, if we make the third inequality as an equation, we know from the graph the optimal solution will not change, at least for this problem, but for other problems it may change. It would be 36 and the same point, same corner point, and this is what we got. So is the idea clear? The idea of what is the idea of introducing this artificial variable and big M in the objective function and do all this stuff? Because we want to get the initial basic feasible solution for the real problem, which you will not otherwise get. I mean, how do you get an initial solution for the real problem? If you have, say, 100 variables in, and so many equations, manually you cannot, it is very difficult. I mean, by trial and error, you can sometimes, if you're lucky, you can find out, right? But there is no other way. I mean, how you can find out? There is no other way. So this is the simplest way of generating an initial basic feasible solution for the real problem. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as long as you are not in the real feasible region, you will have the artificial variable in the base, and you will have big M in the objective. The moment you hit the real feasible region, some solution you find, initial solution, then both of them will, artificial variable will fall to 0. That means it will be non-basic, and big M will disappear from the objective functional value, the RHS. Okay. So we have seen how to handle equations. Now what about greater than equal to? So less than equal to, you already know that
Sir?
this is a standard form. Yes.
Sir, one doubt. Like, yeah, the method which you told, it will work when like it is used when we are not having origin as our feasible solution. But say the entire equation set which we have doesn't have any feasible solution, then how do we conclude that there is no feasible solution?
Yes.
Because if we just keep on doing that, every time we'll have some m, right? I guess.
Right. So you can now answer it. Like, if it doesn't have any feasible solution, what it will mean that you will never get rid of artificial variable, right? Artificial variable will always be in the base, and you will always have big M in your objective function. So if you complete the simplex method and see you have reached optimal solution, but your artificial variable is in the base and your functional value is having big M, then you conclude there is no feasible region. Very simple.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So now see, in the standard form, what we have said, this max z and then ax less than equal to b and x greater. This is a standard form where I put also b greater than equal to 0, right? This is the standard form actually, right? So if b is negative, say for example this one, x1 minus x2 is less than equal to -1, suppose. So although it is less than equal to type, but it is not in a standard form, right? Because the b is negative, so it is not a standard form. So you multiply it with -1, you get greater than equal to type, which is again not in a standard form, right? But don't uh, don't think that if you have only less than equal to type, it is in standard. It's not so. You have to always also look at the sign of b and also sign of x, the decision variables. Okay. So now in many cases, you have less than equal to in this type standard form, you have equations. So for equations, you already know, we introduce artificial variable and how to handle it. But then for greater than equal to, what is the way that we'll discuss now. So you take this example. So this is an example where you see a mix of constraints, right? Less than equal to, and greater than equal to. So this is an ideal example to understand how to apply simplex method for a general problem, right? So for standard, for this first constraint, I have introduced this slack variable. So x3 is slack, right? This standard form. Okay. The next is equation. So for equation, I have to make it look like a less than equal to. So I have to add an artificial slack, which is this x4. So let us denote it x4 bar, right? And I have added a penalty in the objective function big M x4. Here it is minimization, right? So that's why I have added plus M. If it had have been maximization, then I would have added minus M penalty, right? Okay. So up to this is clear. Now what about this greater than equal to? So for greater than equal to, we see that instead of slack, we have a surplus in the left hand side, right? So this x5 is known as surplus variable. Right. So I subtract x5 and then it becomes an equation, right? So when I subtract x5, it becomes minus 6x1 plus 0.4x2 minus x5 equal to 6, right? Now, even this is not sufficient for me. Why? Because this is an equation and I do not have any artificial slack. Because x5 I cannot treat it as a slack. You know why? I cannot treat it like a slack. Why? Because it's minus x5. So I'll not get in the initial table, I'll not get the identity matrix for the slack variables or basic variables, right? So this x5 in this case for this equation cannot be treated as a slack, cannot be treated as a basic variable in your initial table, right? Do you agree with me or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, because I'll have -1, na? So that means it will not be identity, so which means I'll not have the right hand side as my solution. So what we want? We want a slack here. So what I do, I then considered this entire equation as the given equation, and we already know how to introduce artificial variable to an equation. So I do this. So I add a artificial variable x6 and make it equal to 6 and add a penalty plus begin x6. So here in this system, x3 is the real slack, x4 and x6 are the artificial variables who are acting like slacks in their respective equations, and x5 is the surplus variable, which is also greater than equal to 0, no doubt about it, right? But it is -1 times x5. That's why we are not able to use it as a slack in my simplex table, right? So whenever there is greater than equal to sign, I'll need two variables. One is the real surplus variable and another one is the artificial slack variable to start my simplex method. Again, what is the intention? The intention is to find an initial basic feasible solution for the original problem. When will be that? When these x4 and x6, these two artificial variables will fall to, initially they will be in the base. Initially what will be the base? x3, x4 and x6. And as you move on, right, you will find that these x4 and x6 will leave the base. And when both of them will leave the base, then only you will know that you have entered the real feasible region of the real problem, right? Let us try to see it in the graph first. So this is the graph. So this is the equations minus this 0.5x1 plus 0.5x2 equal to 6. So this is the equality constant. This is greater than equal to constant, this one, and this one is the less than equal to constant. This minus 0.3x1 plus 0.1x2 less than equal to 2.7, right? So can you tell me from the graph that what will be the feasible region for this problem? What will be the feasible region for this problem?
The straight line between 6,6 and 7.5, 4.5.
Right. So this is the feasible region. So these two cross marks, they denote the corner points of that feasible region, right? So your initial solution will be either one of them and your optimal solution will also be either one of them, right? Now, as you can see now also that your origin is not part of the feasible region, right? And so you have done some modifications in the system, introducing artificial variables and all, right, to include the origin as your feasible solution, right? So now with these artificial variables and all, every constant is now of less than equal to type, right? This constant is also now less than equal to type. This is also less than equal to type, because those artificial variables are acting like slacks, and this is also less than equal to type. So now for this system, this artificial system, artificial problem, we call it artificial problem because it is not real, right? This was not the original problem. So for this artificial problem, what are the corner points? So these circles, they are the corner points for the artificial problem, not CPF, CF actually, corner CP, corner points. And then what are the CPFs for the artificial problem? So one is this one, right? This one, and then another is this one. Then what about this one? Is this a CPF corner point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Corner point, right? Because in two
Yes, sir.
dimension you cannot really see it, but these are planes because you have a surplus for this constraint. So in graph it is very difficult to show you, but it is actually a corner point for the artificial problem. And then this one, and then this one, and then this one also, right? So now you have the artificial problem, right? But essentially what will you do? You will start from the origin, and when you apply the simplex method, it will take you to some next corner point. Then finally it will make you enter either this 7.5, 4.5 or 6.6, right? Where you will see that all artificial variables have disappeared. They have all fallen to zero. They are all non-basic. Okay, so let us see how your simplex does this. So first is this one. So first table is this. See, again I have modified this objective function, to this objective function is modified because originally see it was like this minus it was originally minimization, so I have multiplied with -1 to make it maximization, to make it to a standard form, right? So it is equivalent if you multiply it -1 and then you can put max, right? So this was the original objective function for the artificial, not original, artificial objective function. So I have modified it to look like this. I have only kept the coefficients for x1, x2 and x5, and x3, x4, x6 because they are in the base, they are all slacks, their coefficients are 0. So if you have coefficients for any of them, you have to do Gaussian elimination and make them 0, and this is what we have done, and we have got this modified objective function. So now it is expressed only in terms of non-basic variables, which are x1, x2 and x5, right? And we have got this. So this is representing the origin 0, 0, where x1, x2 are 0, non-basic, right? And z value is -12m. Fine. So now you do your simplex method as usual. You choose this x1 to enter and then x3 to leave, and you get this next table. What is this table? x1 is 9, right? And x2 is 0, so 9, 0. So in the graph it is 9, 0. So this point, so it was here and now it is at 9, 0. Fine. Now again it should move here 8, 3, next corner point, right? So again you do and you get this 8, 3. This point is 8, 3, this table, right? Now even here you see that there is big M in the objective function, and your x4 is in the base. That means still you have one So in the earlier iteration, x6 had left the base. So x6 is now 0. It's non-basic, right? But x4 is still in the base. So that's why big M is still there in your objective value. Fine. So you again keep doing this very mechanical process. Okay. So you enter x5 and then now x4 will leave in this iteration, right? So in this iteration, x4 will leave. And you get the next table. What is this next table? Value is 7.5 x1 and x2 is 4.5. So from 8.3 you have moved to 7.5, 4.5. Value of z is minus 5.25, which means that it is now free of big N. Okay, very good. So what you can conclude now, that you have reached the initial basic feasible solution for the real problem, because all the artificial variables are now 0. So you are back to the original system, right? With this starting BFS, having x1, x5 and x2 as your basic variables. See, x5 is there because it's real surplus, it is there in the original system. Similarly, real slacks are there. Okay, but artificial variables must be driven to 0. That means must be thrown out of the base. Okay, and then your system, your simplex method takes care of it. It will automatically throw it off. Okay. Now, at this stage, you know that you have hit a real feasible point. So now what's next? You have to search for optimality. So first you check whether this solution is optimal or not. If it is not, then you have to perform again simplex iteration, right? So is this optimal? The table, this table. I have modified the jet, function as maximization, right? So for maximization, what is the check for optimality?
Positive coefficients.
Positive. So here, what is your, yeah, all the coefficients of the variables are positive here, right? -1 just represents that you have changed the objective. It was originally minimization, you have multiplied with -1 and made it maximization. So this -1 you don't consider, right? The other variables you see. So all are positive, which means this is the optimal. And what is the optimal value is minus 5.25. But your original problem was minimization. So when you report the solution, it will be z equal to, so this is equal to, so this is basically minus z equal to minus 5.25, right? So z equal to 5.25. So this is the minimum value, 5.25, and which happens at this point, 7.54. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a little observation. See, from 0, 0 we have come to 9, 0, then 8, 3, then 7.5, 4.5. Right. So the method could have taken us from these 8, 3 to 6, 6 as well, instead of 7.5, 4.5. If you would have taken to 6, 6, then we would have to perform the simplex, method iteration on that real table, right? And then in the next iteration, we have got the optimal solution. Okay. So we can clearly see that, we do it in two phases basically, right? In the first phase, we try to find an initial basic feasible solution for the real problem, right? And in the next phase, we try to find the optimal solution for that real problem. Okay. Now, what we can do, we can, actually divide it into two phases, and make two problems and solve them separately. So this is basically a some adaptation of this big M method. Essentially the essence is same, the method is also same, but we just avoid these big M calculations here, like because big M often leads to numerical instability in computers, and even manual calculations become difficult with big M. So in order to avoid this big M, what we do, we divide this thing into two phases. In the phase one, we construct one problem, and in phase two, the real problem, right? Phase one. So in phase one, what we do, we add the artificial problems and try to make them to zero, all of them, right? So in phase one, we just write a different objective altogether, which is minimize z equal to x4 plus x6. That means sum of artificial variables. So phase one is sum of minimizing the sum of artificial variables, right? When it will be minimized, the sum of artificial variables, what will be the value, minimum value at the optimal
0.
solution? 0, right? Because we want all of them to 0. So essentially, when you solve phase one by simplest method separately, you will find the optimal value 0, and you will get some solution, and there you will see that these artificial variables are non-basic in phase one. Last table, right? Last table or the optimal table, right? And you then use it as the seed for phase two. So this gives the seed for phase two. The optimal solution of phase one gives the seed for phase two, where you actually consider the real objective, which is 0.4x1 plus 0.5x2, right? And the real constraints, which is this, without any artificial variable, right? So what is the advantage? The advantage is that you simply avoid big M in this process. That is the only advantage. Otherwise, all the remaining process is the same. So can you do it on your own and tell me whether you are getting the same solution or not? You got the idea. So instead of writing penalties and all, you are simply writing you have changed the objective function of phase one to minimization of sum of artificial variables, because the minimum value will be 0 when all the variables will fall to 0, and that's what you want. Okay, the constants are written with those artificial variables and surplus, whatever is there, right? You solve it to optimality. That optimal solution, when you look at it, you will see that all the artificial variables are 0 now, they are non-basic. So that base you use in the phase 2. Whatever the basic solution that we are getting BFS at the last table of phase 2, you use at the first table of phase 2. Last table of phase 1 becomes the first table of phase 2. With this changed objective, so there you have to just change the objective. Don't touch the constraint set. Only you change the objective. You put the real objective there. And then again solve by simplex to get the solution. Okay? So these you do on your own and show me tomorrow. Any question?
No, sir.